A warm welcome to everybody here to our ARI event during the Berlinale. We are really happy to have you here. After we had last year a film called Les Adieux à la Reine, which was the opening film of the Berlinale last year. We have this year a very, very good and very popular film and successful film, Life of Pi, the making of Life of Pi. Being from ARI and responsible for camera and digital intermediate there in our business unit, we are very proud that this film was captured with Alexa, our digital camera. Has a box office of over $560 million in the meanwhile. Is nominated for 11 Oscars, including Best Visual Effects. Jason Bayer from Rhythm and Hues here on stage.
I'm going to present to you a little bit about the making of Life of Pi, try to go into a little bit of the production, just give you a little bit of insight of what we went through for the past few years working on this production. Just quickly, a quick production of Life of Pi and how it went down. The movie itself has 960 total shots. And for those of you that have seen it, it's a very long movie. It's almost 2 hours. The shots of the 960 were visual effects shots in the movie. And here's one of the shots that I'm going to just bring up as a quick example. It had to be absolutely beautiful, absolutely stunning, and absolutely real. So artistic imagery was going to be another challenge. And then, of course, this whole thing was shot in 3D. That in itself is a royal pain. So in August 2009, Ang Lee came to our studio and said, does an animal look more or less real in 3D? Why is 3D so hard? First and foremost, just actually shooting it. 2 times the camera equipment. It's heavy camera equipment, so to get very dynamic shots, you have to build all of the structure to put that in place. The visual effects work has to be precise. And if you are, especially when dealing with water, because the way they shoot stereo is they have a 2-camera setup.
how many Alexas have been used on this well-done film? And only Alexas, or other cameras besides the still cameras for the backgrounds?
All of the cameras that created footage that were seen in the movie were Alexas. I think they had other cameras around for witness cameras around. We had to have witness cameras for tracking the water, because when you're looking down into the tank and you only see a moving boat and moving water, you have nothing to track to. So we had to have witness cameras up in the top edges of the set, and there were a bunch of those, so it helped us track. But I think everything that shot imagery were Alexas, and I don't know how many they had.
It's a like.
Huh? Yes.
I'm out with the Alexa camera like 3 years ago. So many people said, is it as good as a film camera? Is it as good Kodak stock or Fuji stock? So this film has not been shot on film. Why is this?
First and foremost, I think it's too much to do a film movie in stereo. But just from working with imagery for a very long time and seeing the images that came off this, a lot of the beauty of the images came from Claudio and Ang and what they wanted to see, but the actual quality that we got and the quality that we worked with on this movie from the camera, we were able to pull from blue screen keys, we were able to pull individual hairs with less of an issue than in the past. A lot of times the grain will kill that for you. Even if you try to pull that hair off of the green screen, like the single hairs, they'll still be noisy because you're trying to pull it through. But we were able to really get nice keys. There was, as I mentioned, there was a very, very wide gamut coming off of this. So we got all of our highlights were preserved, very little clipping. So just the camera was really phenomenal. The images that we got off the camera were phenomenal. And I don't think you need a 4K. You need just high quality, because the movie was seen in HD. It wasn't really shot it wasn't shown on 4K projector. It was shown as it was and shot, and it was stunning.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I exactly remember when Glenn Kennell called us, who was the president of Area Incorporated in Los Angeles, and said, well, they are prepping for that show, and how far are we done with Area Raw, which would have had a high resolution of like 3K. And R&D said, well, we are not done with that, so we had to give your crew and the filmmakers the decision and the information that you have to have HD as a resolution and not higher. So you mentioned it, or you kind of said it already. So what is the feeling now after having done so many complex keyings and blue screens and green screens and with motion blur, but having only HD resolution? So how was that going in post? Was it a problem? Would you have wished to have more pixels? How was that?
The only potential issue that would have come up was being able to pan a little bit. So if it wasn't shot exactly as they wanted it, with a full 2K image, you get a little bit more to move the camera around in post. That was a little bit less of a problem on our show, because so much of what we did was computer generated, the skies, the water. So if we had to pan off of the shot, it wasn't as hard to do. But as far as resolution and quality of image, that wasn't at all a problem. Yeah,
so we had the statement by Jake Morrison, who was the visual effects supervisor of Marvel Avengers, who said that he liked the pixels because of their quality. So he said it's better to have good pixels than more pixels. Is that something you would follow?
Oh, absolutely. No question about it.
Did you do any live previs, so live simulation of the later compositing and the later backgrounds?
No.
Or was it just shot pure, and Bill had the imagination how he would do the compositing later and positioning of ships, or the ship and the tiger? Or did you have any kind of previs on location?
No, the previs that was there was all the reference that they had. They didn't do any live compositing on set or anything like that.
Okay. And the second question, what about the color pipeline, or the previs of the real colors on location and during editing and during visual effects? Can you talk about that?
Sure. A lot of the color information, they shot the stuff, it came off camera, and then Claudio would sit down and color correct all the images as they came off camera. And then we got delivered those. Those would then be written out and given to the Avid people. And then we got the raw images, not raw, but raw as in no color correction applied to them. And we got something called a CDL, which is the color decision list out of this. So Claudio really had the freedom to push these images anywhere he wanted to, and we didn't have any issues when we got the images, because if something was clipped or if you pushed it too far, too dark, because as you saw that one shot at night, if you push that way down like that, a lot of that detail could potentially be clipped later on if you applied that first. So we got the raw off the camera footage in DPX form. We got all of his color decision lists, and then we applied those color decision lists in our pipeline. That way we were able to maintain all of the dynamic range that came out off of these images. The lookup table was very, very good also. It's hard to describe, but when you're working in film, the lookup table tends to be a little bit difficult to work with because of the color that comes off film and when you print a film. And this was just a very pure lookup table, and it was much easier to work with than a film project.
You do not see any restriction or limitation in shooting digital?
I personally, I don't see any limitation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think for the purposes of full movies where you do want to pan the shot around a little more, it might be nice to have a little more resolution, but even we pushed into a lot of shots and it still held up. So we could push 10, 12% in and it would still hold up as sharp enough. So that high quality was definitely worthwhile.
So have there been any limitations for the outdoor shoots in terms of dynamic range?
I don't believe of any limitations.
So everything was just there. Was
there. I think the real advantage was in dark. It really maintained a lot of that, and they didn't have to put huge, super bright lights on the characters and
by the way,
cake them with makeup, and their makeup starts to melt and all of that fun stuff. So that limitation is not as much of a limitation with this.
Do you know which sensitivity he has chosen? 800 ASA or 400? 800 all the way through?
Yeah. And I think, actually, Claudio, chose different ones, but we worked in 800 consistently.